Welcome, everybody. Once again, Kim is posting a couple of links into the chat for all of you. One is a link for church visitors. That's your participants guide for today. Okay. So you want to click on that and make your own copy, by the way. Save it, make your own copy so that you're not saving stuff that everybody else will see. And then another link for regional pastors. Again, that's your participants guide for today's session. Make sure to make a copy and save that to your own files, and then you can take all the notes you want to on those notes, on those documents. And while we're waiting for 2:30 to, it looks like it's almost here, but roll around. If you haven't already done so, give us a number between 1 and 10 that tells us how satisfied you are with your ability to fulfill the role of regional pastor or church visitor. 1 being least happy, 10 being most satisfied. Let us know what you think. We'll give everybody another, it is 2:30 already. We'll give everybody another minute or two to climb on board here. And as for the numbers, I'm seeing 7 a lot, 6, 8. Glad for that. Our hope is that with today's session, we'll bump that number to 7.25 or 8.25 or whatever. Oh my, Joel. Joel, we got to talk. I wonder what the difference is between 7.249 and 7.50. It's like one telephone call that went south or something. Who knows? Bob's got 7.37. Nicely done. Welcome, everybody. We'll get started in just a little bit here, but in the meantime, we are posting numbers from 1 to 10 on how satisfied we are with our ability to fulfill this role of regional pastor, church visitor. And 1 is the least happy, 10 is the most happy, and we're seeing lots of 7s and 6s and some creative numbers, I will say, creative numbers for registering your ability to do this work well. And Kim is posting into the links. Let's do that one more time into the chat. Let's just do that one more time yet, Kim. And these are the documents you'll need for the day's session. 1 is for church visitors, 1 is for regional pastors. They are your participants guide for today. Save a copy of the document that you'll be directed to, and then you can take all the notes you want without having anybody else see what you're writing. All right, tell you what, let's get started. Thank you, all of you, for joining with us today. Delighted to see you. So thankful for your partnership with us here at Thrive as you do the good work of visiting with churches and pastoring pastors. We cannot do our work without great people on the ground like you folks to do the work of the church more broadly across congregations and across pastoral experiences. So we are always aware of our dependence on people like you to help us to do our work. And when we are engaged in things like consultations, the first people we try to get to touch with, to talk with, is folks like you, so we can have somebody there on scene to do the work that we want to be doing well. We are going to be together until about 4:30 today. We'll be together in large group for about an hour, and we're going to do 3 things together. Joel Van der Werken is going to walk us through a couple of things related to Synod 2025, especially the items of Synod that relate to your functionary positions. We want to make sure that if there's something that you need to be aware of, that you have some way to do that here today. We'll also have pretty soon Trudy Ash join us. Trudy is a colleague here at Thrive, and she's in charge of our regional connectors. These are the people, 1 in each region of the CRC, who are busy connecting churches and congregations with resources that Thrive has published in the past or is currently publishing. We want you, all the churches out there, to be as well resourced as possible, and these regional connectors are pivotal for that. So Trudy will walk us through some of that stuff. And then we'll have Sarah Gibbous join us. She is our network administrator. The network, the CRC network is the one I'm referring to, is CRC Google. And there is, I'm going to say, an embarrassment of riches available on the network. And we want to make sure that you're aware of some of that. She'll highlight a few key resources for you. And we'll just get a better kind of a window into what's available to you on the network. So let's just do a couple of introductions here before we get started, and then we'll open with prayer. Let me introduce myself quickly a minute. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Denhan, and I work at Thrive as a ministry consultant. Been here since 2018, back when we were still known as Pastor Church Resources. Now I get to work with some really great colleagues from different ministries, all of us congregation-facing ministries. That's what Thrive is all about. We're not Reframe, we don't do broadcast. We're not Resonate, we don't do global mission. We are Thrive. We do congregational thriving. That's our job. That's our task. So we're glad to be able to do that with you and for you. Like I say, been here since 2018, live in Jenison on the west side of Grand Rapids, work out of the denominational building, and glad to be at your service. Let me turn it over to Joel and Kim and have them introduce themselves as well. Joel, why don't you go first?
Yeah, sure. Joel Van Orden. Thanks, Dave. I work with the Office of General Secretary, which is the office that interacts with Synod the most directly. I've been in this role for about a year with my role with ecclesiastical governance, which is a lot of church order consultation, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of support, not just for assemblies, but also for interaction with, like Dave said, with church visitors and somewhat with regional pastors as well. So glad to be on this call today and appreciate all your work.
Thanks, Joel. Kim, how about you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kim Rankins. I'm one of the administrative coordinators for Thrive, and we help Dave and all the rest of the Thrive staff with a lot of different things. So one of the other major things that I do is pastor search. So if anybody is in need of information for that, then I'm the one who usually will answer those questions and get you started. And events are also one of my main tasks. So if any of you are signed up for the pastors gathering in a couple weeks, I'll see you there.
Thank you, Kim. Kim is the reason you're not looking at a blank screen today, but instead you are looking at a Zoom meeting that's all been set up and stuff. She handles that stuff for us, so I'm thankful for Kim. One PSA before we go to prayer, public service announcement. I'm going to put in the chat a link. That's a registration link for the November 5 orientation session. This is for all of you, but particularly if you're a newbie to the role. If you're a new church visitor or a new regional pastor, hang out with us for an hour and a half on November 5, and we will hopefully try to get you all the information you need to do your work well. Okay? Let's go to God, everybody. Let's pray. Father, we are glad to be together and glad to have you in our midst. We pray for your hand of blessing upon us as we think and talk together, as we make plans, as we think about what the church should do and should be, and our role in helping the church to do that and to be that. And as we think about how pastors can function fruitfully, and as we think about how to help them do that, give us your spirit in this meeting. Enable us to think your thoughts after you. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let me just ask if anybody out there has tried to get to the link for today's participant guide and cannot. Anybody that can't access that? I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand or throw a hymnal at the screen, so I think we're in good shape. With that in mind, Joel, I'm going to turn it over to you and have you walk us through what Synod 2025 might say to those of us who are serving in these two functionary roles, church visitor and regional pastor.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dave. Synod 2025 didn't do anything that really fundamentally changed the nature of the roles that church visitors and regional pastors did. But I think there's a lot of things in our denominational conversations right now that it took a look at, and a few things that it pointed directly to and said, hey, here's some areas where those of you serving in these roles could really assist with churches. The first had to do with something that's actually been in the works for a couple of years now. Some of the changes that were adopted with regard to Articles 12 to 17 of the church order. Those are the ones, as a number of you probably know, that deal with calling and supervision of non-congregational ministers, as well as with release from service especially in congregations, but also from the denomination. And there were some changes there relative to especially the role that church visitors played. More explicit instructions to ask about the supervision of non-congregational pastors that, if if the church you're visiting holds the credentials, for example, for a chaplain or a missionary, just making sure that you ask about their welfare, and there's a little more detail or suggestions for churches given there about how they can best support, encourage, and hold these pastors accountable for the ministry that they're doing. Those changes, like I said, were not brand new this year. They were actually discussed a year ago at Synod 2024, but they did go into effect this year, so you can read through that. One of probably the biggest changes had to do with the allowance of a council under certain kind of carefully controlled conditions to initiate a leave of absence for a pastor. This is designed to be temporary, but it's that's one thing that very specifically requires the interaction with church visitors before the council moves forward with that. Obviously, trying to make sure that they protect the pastor. And although it's not said specifically there, I would think that would be a good time to make sure that the regional pastor is involved too, that's not meant to simply be something that the church visitors are informed about and keep to themselves. So that was kind of one area where Synod has adopted some changes. A couple of other things, there's some conversation about healthy spouses, and the Synod made some recommendations related to that. And there again, there was some encouragement for church visitors and regional pastors to inquire not just about the health of pastors, but also about the health of pastoral spouses. And I think even in the church guide for church visiting already, for those of you who've done that, there's already provisions to have some of those conversations kind of with pastoral couples apart from a meeting with the council. So that's another area that the Synod addressed this year. And then a couple of ones around kind of some of the steps of accountability and conversations about covenant for office bearer stuff that was related to decisions that Synod made in the last couple of years. I think we all realize these are ongoing conversations, and there were a couple of different times where Synod spoke into this. One was concerns where there might be some kind of, trying to circumvent the decisions that Synod had made, and Synod said, no, church visitors should be involved there. But the other one had to do with churches where there are office bearers or potentially office bearers who are genuinely struggling with what does it mean for me to sign a covenant for office bearers. Maybe in some cases there were people who would say, I thought I knew, but now I'm not less certain about what that means. And just recognition that this is something that church visitors should be prepared to interact with. To be a good sounding board for councils that are trying to walk through this question and walk their council members through this question. Again, recognizing that we've made decisions as a denomination, we do want to keep those in covenant with each other, but also that there are places where we can help support each other as we walk through whatever questions may be out there. So there wasn't really any specific here's the steps you need to take as church visitors or as regional pastors, but a recognition that there are these questions, and that for some congregations, these are really important questions to be addressing, and it's good to have outside resources to be able to navigate those together. So, those were kind of the highlights from Synod this year. And Dave, you want to add anything to that you've been working on, or?
Not necessarily add anything, Joel, but thanks for that very much. That's helpful. I think what I'm curious about with the group here today is their engagement with the pastoral spouses kind of concept or issue. And I'm curious to see if there is anybody out there, particularly thinking about regional pastors, who have given some thought to this, have developed any plans around helping churches support their pastor's spouse. I just would love to hear if there is anybody out there doing stuff now already that we could learn from. Anybody that has a practice going, some kind of a way to support churches as they support their church pastors. Anybody out there got something that they could put on the table for us? Going once?
Well, perhaps just an observation, Dave, and then a possible idea as well. First, the observation, not related to my work as regional pastor, but related to my work at Calvin Seminary. I was in Alberta last week and reached out to a pastor that I needed to connect with and invited him out for dinner. And he was willing to do that. And then I added, please, if your wife is available, Jessica, bring her as well. And he commented right away in the email, as well as during dinner itself. And it just served as such a good reminder to me, because I probably don't remember it often enough in my regional pastor work. They both just commented on how significant that was, that Jessica had been invited, that he just said that's never happened before. And so that served as a good reminder to me of the importance of all that and how often pastoral spouses probably are overlooked. In terms of practices in classes Quinty, we're fortunate to, this started long before I was regional pastor, to have a pastors and spouses retreat every year. And we do it at the same time of year. February, it's kind of a down month. We go to a nice location. It's not a camp type setting. It's more a resort type setting. It's strongly supported by classis in terms of funding. Each couple does have to pay a nominal fee, but most churches even cover that for their pastor, as well as pay the classical ministry shares associated with it. We probably get about 80 to 85% participation in the classes. And it just proves to be a time year after year that people look forward to. And it changes the flavor of classes when we're engaged in ministry work, when we're engaged in meetings. The fact that we've been together, and it's not a learning opportunity. We don't bring in a speaker. It's very much a sharing and care time together, 3 days together. Lots of prayer over one another and with one another. And it really does change the overall texture of classes as we engage in other work. It just feels so good to know our colleagues' spouses, to know their names, to know their faces, to know their stories.
Yeah. Thank you, Sean. Great additions to the conversation. A couple of things that I might add, and then if there's anybody else that's got something to say, that'd be great too. But at Classis Georgetown, the classes that I've been a part of for quite a while, since 1999, good grief. There's a practice of having one of the pastor spouses, happens to be my spouse, Connie, who's given some money by the classes to have a monthly dinner just for pastors' spouses, and in this case, pastors' wives. No agenda, except to have dinner and share some time together, be in prayer together, hear each other's stories, be in support of one another. And I'm not sure what the amount is that Classis gives to her to do this, but it more than covers dinner at a restaurant where they can get a table off to the side a little bit, just have a great conversation. And the group is anywhere from 4 to 8 on a monthly basis. We probably got in the classes 15 to 20 pastors' wives who could be part of this. And for whatever reason, a lot of them say, I'm good. But there are a few who come, and there are a few who come regularly. And it's evident to Connie that this is being a blessing to them. Again, she brings no agenda other than to share time and to share food. And that's highly appreciated among those who come. And then maybe I'll add this story. Going back to, I think, what was the very first Pastor Spouses Conference? It was in Toronto, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And my wife went to that with some friends from here in Michigan. And she remembers very clearly in an opening session at that conference, there was an open mic for anybody to come and just share their experience as a pastor's spouse. And I think those who led that seminar were just anticipating some warm fuzzies, perhaps, or some kind of cool stories of people doing great ministry together. What ended up happening was, I'm going to call it a bit of a bloodletting. There was significant emotion and significant pain voiced at the mic in a room full of others who kind of got it. And it just made super clear to us at Thrive, it was Pastor Church Resources back then, but made it super clear to us that there is some deep need among pastor spouses, particularly among some who've been through some pain with their spouse, to have a place to voice that and have that addressed redemptively. So just a word to regional pastors out there, particularly, just to have an eye for that. And you may, at your classis leadership meeting, suggest something like what we've done at Classis Georgetown. Let's set aside some money. Let's find a person. Let's host a few dinners over the course of a year and provide a space for pastor spouses just to kind of speak their mind and talk about their experiences. And I think there are two ditches to fall into on this topic. One is pastors who minister with their wives or with their spouses in ways that make the position that's designed for one person into a position that's filled actually by two, one who's called and one who's not. And there's I think some unhealth there. On the other hand, there's the ditch of the pastor who engages ministry, and there is really no connection at all to his or her spouse, and no expectation that the spouse engage in conversation, talk about ministry, and that sort of thing. There's some unhealth there too. The middle ground between those two ditches is where health is to be found. And what that does mean is that pastor spouses are in some way impacted and affected by what's going on in the church and worthy of support, perhaps from the classis, perhaps in the form of the money that the Synod asked churches to donate to the cause of supporting their pastors' wives and pastors' husbands. Let me just stop to see if anybody else has a comment on this topic, and then we can go on. I've got another question for Joel before we move on here, actually, but anybody else want to offer a thought on pastor's spouse support? All right.
So Dave,
John, yeah.
right over here, yes. So in Glasses of Burn North, we have a kind of an intention that when a church visit happens, and that the pastor and the spouse also be included in a visit with the church visitors, not in a council setting, but looking for an opportunity to, if the council meeting is later on in the evening, then to have dinner or lunch with the pastor and the spouse, for that reason. Now, sometimes that works well. I mean, the opportunity is there. Sometimes it isn't, but there's a kind of a sense of, hey, listen, if you have the chance and if the opportunity is there, please, have dinner with the pastor and the spouse before you have a council meeting or something like that. So that's what we try to do, and that has. There have been various degrees of opportunity for that to happen for our church visitors. We've also had a regular ministry leaders retreat, pastor spouse retreat, and that has gone over very well. And we've done that usually once every year and a half, alternately in the spring and the fall. And that's usually with the good attendance. And that has also morphed from having someone who is a speaker and to present material to not having a speaker and providing our own material in our discussions and our feedback, and that's proved sustainable, and it's been helpful. And I appreciate what Sean said about how it affects the mood of classes too. You're right; he's right. I mean, in terms of when you see each other in long weekend setting, in a retreat setting, yeah, that fosters commonality, community, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks, John. And I just note that Al Scott from Classis Central California chimed in the chat just to say that their practice is very similar to that first thing that you talked about, connecting a church visit with connecting with the pastor and the pastor's spouse. Some good ideas. Joel, the wonder that I'd like to connect with you about is about the covenant for office bearers. I know you've been having significant conversations around the denomination with people about that. What are the questions that you're most commonly faced with, and how are you responding to those?
Yeah, there's a lot about there's churches that are wrestling with these issues tend to kind of wonder where are the boundaries and how tightly did the lines get drawn by Synod 2024. One of the common responses, and I get some of these questions, Sean Baker, who also works for Thrive, has been dealing a lot with some of these questions. A lot of it comes, people say, well, I don't feel like I can sign the covenant for office bearers anymore. And I feel like, the most productive line of inquiry into that is often one to start, kind of expressing some curiosity about, well, what in the covenant for office bearers are you not able to sign on to? Because one of the things that it seems like is often in the water when these conversations are coming up is less about particular doctrines, which is what the covenant for office bearers is about, and more about a sense or a vibe that's out there that didn't sit well. And that could be from a variety of things. It could be because of something somebody saw on a podcast or heard on a podcast, or, was attributed to somebody that was said at Synod. Interactions in individual conversations. But I think, just trying to get kind of to the question behind the question, because often there's more to it than that, and trying to figure out what, if the person's looking for space, what are they looking for space to do? Because in some cases that space is already there. There may be places where people genuinely disagree with the confessions, and that's a different conversation. But just to determine whether it's an actual factual question or more of a vibe. So,
yeah, that's helpful. Thanks, Joel.
I can say more about that later, if somebody has specific questions too, but that kind of gives a little bit of background.
Yeah, thank you, Joel. Just note one of the chat questions, how many classes provide a stipend or funding for church visitors? If you've got something to offer to John Lee in response to that, just put that in the chat. And John, I invite you to pay attention to what might pop in the chat in response to your good question. I know that there are classes that provide a stipend for regional pastors, so they can take the pastors of classes out for dinner and that sort of thing. I just wonder about, along with John, whether that's the case as well for church visitors. I am seeing Sarah Gibbous on the call with us here today. She's just arrived, and I'm glad for that. Sarah is our network administrator. She helps to navigate, or to manage, I should say, the CRC network, which, as I said earlier, is our maybe version of Google. But I'll let Sarah talk a little bit more about what that actually is and what that's like. Sarah, maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit first, and then, walk us into what the network is, what it does, and how we access it. And if there are some items in the network you'd like to highlight, that would be terrific. Sarah, welcome.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Dave. So yeah, my name is Sarah. I'm the network coordinator here at the denomination. I am based out of Wisconsin, so I live in Madison, Wisconsin. And yeah, that's the role that I have. I'm actually also a graduate student, so that's the place that I'm playing now. I'm gonna share my screen so you can see what the network looks like, and then I will put the link to it in the chat so you can all follow along with our conversation on your own as well. So that should be the link that takes you. Your page will look a little bit different because I have the administrative access, but this is in general what the network is going to look like. So I'll give you all a second to find it, and then we will start going through. If you ever have a question while we're talking, please just feel free to put something in the chat and we can address it as we go. So we can go. So the network is the CRC sort of official blog. Although it might be a little bit different than blogs that you've seen in the past. It basically has been around for exactly 15 years as of February 2025. So it definitely predates me a little bit. But I host a lot of material from the denomination. So this is everything from like traditional blog posts. There's a huge number of ministry resources. So this could be things like PDFs of books that are in public domain. It could be official resources that are published by the denomination, things of that sort. It includes a lot of like music resources. It includes sermons that people have published on the network. There's a lot of things that are housed on it. It also has a space where you can ask a question and anyone who reads the network can respond to it. So it's a good source for sort of crowdsourcing answers to things. It also has a job board. I don't know if any of you have used that or been interacted with it at some point. But yeah, so that's the general idea of what is going on over there. So this is obviously what it looks like on the front. There's lots of different subheaders of content. So if you wanted to look for something specific, let's say you had a question about something church administrative related, you can always just go to the church admin side and it'll have a lot of resources for you or for your church or for some people that you know regarding to things like administration. If you go to something like leadership, often people tend to post either like very practical advice about leadership. Some like specific denominational statements are also made in this category. If you're looking for something maybe specific to doing ministry with people who have disabilities, for example, you can definitely find similar resources like on the specialized communities page. If you're looking for resources specifically for Canadian churches, there's also resources for that here. So there's basically any category of information that you could want. It's probably on the network somewhere. So I highly recommend just taking a look through it at some point if you want to learn more. So if you're wondering, okay, so we have this huge pile of resources on the internet, what can I use it for in my role? I think it's a really good space to find specific resources for most questions that you could possibly think of. Whether it's I want to find something that came out in like 2018, I don't know, like a song that was really popular or something, you could probably find it. It's also a place where you can post resources that you have, or you can post a reflection, or you can ask a question. Like the general rule that we have is it should be related to ministry in the CRCNA in some way. We're really not a site to like publish something. So if you had, for example, an outside blog, it's great for you to post stuff there, but we really this might not be the best place necessarily to share that. And this also isn't a space for soliciting anything. All the resources that we have on here are completely free. So we don't want to like sell anything because that's really not the goal of this resource either. But again, there's lots of really practical questions that people ask, and I think people often have very interesting responses to it. Again, if you're wondering how can I address a specific question, I'm sure that other people have probably been thinking about it too and would have really interesting things to respond to you about it. And again, if you're in the process of searching for a position or you know anyone else who is searching for a position, we have many different positions that are on the job board. This includes pastoral positions, but it also includes sort of other church ministry positions. Like the last month, we've had a lot of like facilities coordinator jobs posted on here. So if you know anyone who's looking for like a facilities coordinator position at a church you're working at, the network can be a great place for that. As well as official CRCNA ministry positions. So this is like denominational jobs would also be posted on here. So it's a great resource for that as well. And again, it's also a great space for you to post your own ideas. Like if something that you did or that you've been thinking about and you'd like to share it with others, this is a great place to share it. The only thing to be aware of is sometimes there's copyright issues. So again, if it's like something that you bought from somewhere, we probably can't post it on here because someone else probably holds that copyright. But if it's in public domain, this is definitely a great space to share it with other people. So any general questions so far? I know I'm going through this presentation pretty quickly. I'll keep moving if no one has questions. But again,
There's a question in the chat, Sarah, about filters on the job board.
Oh, perfect. We're actually redoing the job board like right now. It's in the process of getting it. Let me pull up the chat. Yeah, so we are working on fixing the filter on the job board. So currently you're not able to filter for a full-time pastor only position, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks, our filters, we're like redoing the data structure behind it. So you will be able to filter like by location as well as by if you were looking for a full-time position, and things like that. That is coming very soon. I know it's been an issue for a while, so just it'll be here soon. Perfect. So, again, like what is our vision for this? The goal is to have the network sort of be a one-stop shop. So the goal is to have it house sort of any CRC&A related ministry resource, as well as just like wisdom and thoughts about doing ministry. Um, and as well as provide a place for productive discussion. So a good example is a resource that was developed by Thrive around supporting pastors who are in the process of approaching retirement. So there's a huge number of resources here, and they are all just like series of network posts. So, as you can see, if you ever had questions about some things such as like approaching retirement and the process that goes into that, this is a great place to find those. So that's sort of the overall goal and vision that we have for the network. Now, I wanted to do a little practice because I know sometimes it can be a little bit challenging to find specific information on here. So I wanted to do a little scavenger hunt to see what we can all come up with if we're looking to answer specific questions. If you like don't want to do this, you don't have to. But I just wanted to give us some practice sort of navigating the network. So let's say you were looking for resources about pastoral leave. I just want you to think like what you could search for on the network and see what people are able to come up with.
Yeah, so you're looking at the search function,
Yep,
top right-hand corner, type
definitely.
in pastoral leave or sabbatical or something along that line.
Yeah, so if I search sabbatical, for example, but maybe you wanted to search something else, this search bar is definitely the place you'd want to go to. And I think it will come up with a huge number of resources. Let's see, we get multiple pages of content that we want. So again, when I was making this presentation earlier, I came up with quite a few different things. I don't know if any of you found these, maybe you found something different. But we have things like reflective posts. So just like sort of helping shape ideas surrounding things like sabbatical or taking leave. There's also just really practical things here as well. So there might be something about like support to help churches know like how to provide financial assistance for a pastor who has to go on medical leave, for example. There is like Canadian specific and sort of US specific guidance to leaves of absence. So navigating sort of the legal structures around that for churches as well. So again, there's lots of different things. And I also wanted to use this to point out that we do have specific guidance for churches in both Canada and the US, if those are questions that would be answered differently in a different country or a different context. So again, I just wanted to point that out that we make sure that we provide the resources that are appropriate for whichever country that you're in. That's something that is definitely important for us. So I did this a couple more times just so that we can get a little bit more practice using that search bar. So let's say you had some questions about something related to church staffing. Let's see what different resources people can find for this one.
That's actually a great one, Sarah, because we just came up with a new resource for church staffs.
Yeah, I try to structure this in a way that would be helpful. So
Way to go.
definitely. Because again, I think these are questions that come up a lot, and sometimes we don't always have very obvious resources to help navigate these challenges. But
Sarah, I'm noticing that some of these resources go back a ways. And like there's one I'm looking at from 2011, 2014. So yeah, if you're using the network, you'll just want to keep that in mind. Like there's some stuff that's really current, and there's some stuff that maybe is a little bit dated that you want to take with a grain of salt.
definitely. So again, like we have this whole like compository of resources that goes back for 15 years. So again, if you see something about like something specific that might have been different in the context of 2011, obviously take that with a grain of salt. I think a lot of the resources still are applicable to today. It's not like everything has changed since 2011. But specifically regarding things about like church policies, it maybe is something to take with a grain of salt, as Dave said. Like we're constantly in the process of like going back and filtering out content that isn't relevant anymore. But again, there's a lot of content on here to go through. So but yeah, so I don't know what everyone else found, but I was able to find hopefully quite a few resources that are related to issues of church staffing, also just related to issues of pastoral search committees and things like that. I know there was a big resource that I think was written last year in 2024, specific to the process of pastor searching. So that could be something that is relevant. But again, I just wanted to use this to sort of show that there is a huge amount of resources available to help people answer questions that are related to very nitty-gritty day-to-day. How do we support people that are employed in our church or in our context? And as Dave said, there's a new resource that is coming out. This is this one. So if you look up Employment Essentials, I don't think Thrive has published all of it yet, but it is in process of being completed. So that's definitely something to keep an eye out for because it's going to be a really, really good support for any issues related to sort of employment and staffing and things like that. And I did one more. This is sort of a trickier one because it's very specific. But I want to see if anyone can find the highlights from the September 2025 COD meeting. This is really going to test our searching skills. And this is the last one, I promise. If this isn't your cup of tea, we're almost done. So.
Sarah, just a note further to Dave's comment about the date of some of the resources. I just noticed for the first time that you can actually sort by newest to oldest, that there is a filter for that. I hadn't noticed that before. So
There is
that's a useful, yeah. Yeah, sort by, and then if you click on that, yeah, date newest.
Yeah.
Nice.
So you can sort, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Sean. That is a good point. There's lots of things that you can search by, obviously. You can search by author if you were looking for things posted by a specific person. You can look for things posted by a specific ministry. So like CRC communication, just like the official people publishing official documents. You can look for things by Resonate, for example. You can also sort by newest if that's obviously helpful or most relevant, whatever is there. So again, I just wanted to use this to help us figure out how to use the search tool because I know it can be challenging to go through a really big database of things. Now, hopefully we were all able to find this post. This is from September, so not even a month ago. Well, a little over a month ago now, I guess. But again, I just wanted to show you that you can find official sort of CRCNA documents on here as well. So like all the COD meetings post sort of the highlights or the summary of what happened at the meeting is always posted on the network. Similarly, content that is like after Synod, they post all like the official summaries and everything is posted on the network. So if you ever have questions about those things, the network is the place that you will want to go to. And again, if you sort by newest to oldest, you will always get the most recent one, hopefully. So that is a good point. Okay. Again, I know we're going kind of quickly. Does anyone have any questions sort of related to content or how you can search for things on here? Okay, I'm going to keep moving, but oh, sorry, we had a question.
There's another question in the chat, Sarah. Is there a rule of thumb about when to use the resources link on the crcni.org website and when to use the network? Some things are posted in both places. Some things might be in one place or the other. Do you have a recommendation for where to look?
Yeah, so I think in general, the resources posted on the like official CRCNA page tend to be things that don't change as much, is my understanding. It's also only official published documents like from the CRC. So if you were looking for like something that someone who isn't like an official denominational person like created and posted, that would probably be on the network. But if it was like an official summary of a belief statement, that is something that you'd want to find on the crcna.org page. I don't actually run the crcna.org one, so I'm not entirely sure who decides what gets put on there. But the network is going to have things that are more related to like nitty gritty things related to ministry. as well as all the like official documents for things that are like ongoing. So things like the COD meetings or the summaries from Synod. Um, does that help answer the question at all?
Yeah, that's helpful, Sarah.
Okay, cool. So moving onwards, I just a sort of rhetorical question. I just want you to think about how you could possibly use the network in the work that you do to some extent. And I also wanted to show us how we can post on the network because obviously it's a good place to like receive resources, but it's also a space where we can post something where anyone at this meeting could post something, whether it's asking a question or sharing a sharing a resource or a reflection that you have as well. So I wanted to start this to see if we could help everyone who's here today who doesn't have a network account, make a network account. So when you go onto the official network page, you should be able to press add a post and it will prompt you to make an account when you do that. So I will log out of myself. But if you go to this like first page and press add a post, if you're not already officially logged in, it'll ask you to log in there.
And I'll just put a plug in for you a minute, Sarah. This seems like a little bit of, fine work to set up an account and that sort of stuff. But I got to tell you, it is so worth it because there is so much stuff on the network that can be so helpful. And I've got the link that Sarah shared with us a few minutes ago. I've got it pasted into my toolbar so I can get to all this good stuff like pronto. It's just so helpful.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Dave. I'm glad it's been helpful for you. So I'm just gonna give everyone another minute because you have to like go back to your email in order to make your account. You have to confirm it that way. I know it's a little bit frustrating, but we do it because we try to reduce the amount of spam that we get. So when you have to like authenticate your account, it means that we get less spam. Um, so I'll just wait a second while everyone makes an account. I do suggest using an email that you have easy access to, as well as one that you won't be losing access to in the near future. We can always help you set up with a different email if you lose it, but it's just easier if it's one that you know that you'll have access to for a while. But yeah. And it's also helpful to make sure that you use a password that you can remember. Again, I can always help you reset your password. The website also allows you to do it. But if you set a password that is easier for it to remember, or that if you write it down somewhere, that's always helpful too. But do you need a couple more minutes in order to finish making our account? Is anyone still working on getting it set up?
Sarah, I got a question for you. This is really granular, so feel free to
Perfect.
say, "Yeah, we haven't got time for that, Dave." But I'm on my profile page, and
Okay.
in the toolbar there, that's located underneath my name, there's a social auth. I'm guessing that's authority profiles or authorization profiles or something. What's that about?
Yeah, so we have different levels of sort of administrative access. So basically, most people are just going to have like this standard user access, and then there's different level of administrative access. Honestly, the main reason we have that is based on who has access to add photos to posts. We had issues with, again, like copyright with the photographs. So sometimes people just didn't know if a photo was copyrighted or not. So we would have posts submitted and it might have been a copyrighted photo.
Hmm.
So sort of the fix that we went around that is just like creating different levels of administrative access. So people who post like very often, we just like give them like specific training on how to find photos that are not copyrighted, and then they can post their own photos. Otherwise, I usually ask that people send the photos that they want to use to me, and that just helps me make sure that we're not accidentally using copyrighted photos when we shouldn't be using them. So that's really the reason that we have the multiple levels of administration.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. It is confusing. I think yeah, it's always a little confusing, but that's the way that we have gone into it. So I'm going to move forward a little bit, but if anyone ever needs help or support, you can always email me. My email's at the end of these slides, and I can send them along to Dave to be sent to everyone after this presentation as well. But the next step that I wanted to do is I wanted to see if everyone could find a post that they want to add a comment to. So hopefully you've created your account and you should be logged into the network. So you should just be able to choose a post that you think is interesting. So I'll imitate this first. So let's say I want to post a comment to this sort of Thanksgiving post. You can go down to the bottom and you should be able to add a new comment. So you can add whatever you want down here and then press submit. And then you should be able to submit your comment. Um, when you submit it, it will show up as red. That is because, like the color red. That's because every time like a new user submits their first comment, I have to go in and approve it. Again, this is because this is a spam control thing. It's only your first comment. It just helps us make sure that we don't have a robot posting lots of comments. But once I approve your first comment, then you can comment whenever you want and it won't be read. It'll like automatically be published. So part of this exercise is also to help make sure that everyone is like officially approved and can post things without needing prior approval from the website admin. Um, but yeah, go in and see if you can find a post that you want to add a comment to. There's lots of things to add comments to, obviously, but
Hi, Sarah. Can I ask a question?
yeah, definitely.
I just noticed going back and logging in that some of my comments from 2011 are still there. I'm wondering if our comments are just kept forever on the network.
They are kept there forever unless there's a specific reason to remove it. So if a post is archived, so like if we decide the post isn't relevant anymore, then the comments with that post will also be archived. If you like specifically want to archive something, we can archive it for you or remove it. But yeah, everything does stay on here. So
Okay,
good to
good to
be
know.
aware of. You can also find it on Wayback Machine, Time Machine if you want to, but yeah.
Okay.
There is something else that I notice is the view count that is by, I think, every post, right?
Yep.
That's just interesting information to see how many people have accessed that particular post. And yeah, that's just interesting to know what's popular in terms of what, or maybe what's useful. Maybe that's a better way to think about it. What's useful to people, what they're accessing a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So every post has a particular view count. So this one was published today, so the view count is pretty low. It looks like I'm one of the first people to access it. But yeah, so you can definitely tell what the most popular posts are and things like that. I can actually show you what the most popular post like ever on the network has been, which is kind of fun. Um, this is one that was published during COVID. But it's gotten like over over 200,000 views at this point. So this one just really resonated with people back in 2020, I guess. But yeah, so I mean, these again, like the network is like a public site, so anyone on the internet can read it, and some obviously uh, are popular with an audience outside of the CRC as well. But yeah, so the view counts do update. Obviously, older posts tend to have more views just because they've been around for longer, but um, there are quite a few people who access the network. We have about 50,000 to 70,000 views every month on the website as a whole. We also have newsletters that go out every week, and we have about 10,000 people who open those. So there is a relatively large audience, and it is a global audience. We have people who access the network from all over the world. It's not just here in North America. So I think it's good to keep those things in mind. As you all are submitting comments, I will go back in after this presentation and approve all of them. So that way you can all continue to comment on things in the future and post your own posts. But I just thought this was a good exercise to help us make sure we all have access to it starting today. And again, just to sort of plug the network a little bit, if you ever want to post your own content, whether it's your thoughts or your perspectives, if you have a specific resource that you think would be useful to share, I mean, we would love to offer you a space to present that. And we also have like a specific program where people commit to writing like one network post every month usually. And we really work like within the communications office here to make sure that those are promoted and that they reach the folks who would like most benefit from those posts. So if you wanted to join that, you could also let me know and we could definitely get you plugged in because we offer just like extra supports for people who like want to make a commitment to writing more regularly as well. So again, if you want to join that, just let me know or let Dave know and he can let me know as well. But again, you're probably wondering what happens to this after I publish it. As Ken noted, these things do stay on the internet forever unless we have a specific reason to archive them. So if you, for example, if you like are doing a webinar and you want to share that, then we will have it published until the date of your webinar and then we archive it because the event already happened, so we don't need to have that continue to be published. But if it's like a general sort of post, then we generally do like keep it published for a long time. I review the posts every weekday and they're usually published within a single working day. If you ever have questions about something, you can always reach out to me. We also include them in our newsletters. So our newsletters come out on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So the Tuesday one is like the general network one. I'll give you the link to sign up for that newsletter if you would like to do so. The Wednesday one is sort of like for the whole denomination, like the big like Christian Reform News that email that goes out every week. And then we have one specifically for pastors, which some of you may be enrolled in or not. I'm not entirely sure. But we include network posts in those as well. So based on sort of the content that is in it, we will include it in the newsletters that are relevant. And like I said, like there are a fair number of people who do access these. Like I said, I know the network newsletter has over 10,000 people who get it every week. I know the pastoral one also is pretty close to that. So again, a lot of people do see this information, so that's just something to be relevant to be aware of as well as you're going through this. So, and again, when you submit it, like the comments will be published automatically after I approve your first one. The posts do go into review mode, so I just read through it to make sure that it matches sort of the guidelines that we have, which the vast majority of posts do. I also will add a photo. You can always like submit a photo to me, so you can email me at this email and I can use the photos that you send. I also can find stock photos that are relevant if that's something else that you would prefer. So we can always work together to find something that works as well. So that is the conclusion of what I have presented. Does anyone have any other questions? I know this was like a lot, so I will send along the presentation and you can go through it again.
There, this has been so helpful. I wonder if you could just for a second do a search on a couple of things. Number
Definitely.
one, regional pastors. There we go.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff.
We can go from newest if we want to.
Yeah,
But yeah,
lots of stuff.
definitely.
Cool. And then another search on church visitors.
Yeah, again, there's lots of content related to it.
Yeah, that's cool.
So again, there's lots of information on here related to basically any question that you could possibly have. So, and I'm also always a resource for anyone. So if you ever have any questions related to anything on the network, whether it's, you find something like, oh, I don't think this should be public anymore. This is like super old and not relevant, to I need help finding a specific resource and I think it's on the network, but I'm struggling to find whatever I'm specifically looking for, to anything related to network anything. I'm definitely the person to reach out to. So I look forward to hearing from everyone.
Cool. Yeah, any other questions for Sarah? She's our CRC Network guru. And she'll post, I think Sarah, you said you're going to post your email address here pretty soon. That'd be great.
This is my email. I'm putting it in the chat right now. So you can always reach out to me. You can also reach out to the network email, and I respond to both of those. So yes, Nate.
I I'm wondering about the archiving comments, and is that something you could incorporate in behind? I mean, things come and go, and I think more of us are being aware of like, I got Facebook going back like 20 years now. I don't believe what I believed 20 years ago, but it's still up there and somebody could find it. And so I wonder, especially, when heated things or people change their minds about stuff
Mhm.
over time, if there should be a kind of default after 5 years, it goes away. And if it's archived somewhere, like if you really wanted to know what you commented about something 20 years ago, you can go find it, but it doesn't. Like, I'm wondering if eventually you're just going to get bogged down too with too much stuff.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a discussion. So we're actually in the process of sort of reorganizing the information on the network, and part of that is going to be archiving older material. I mean, the comment specifically about, sorry, the question specifically about comments that people have, that is a really good point to bring up, and I'll definitely bring it back to sort of the team that's working on reorganizing the content. Because again, obviously the world has changed a lot in the last like 15 years, and the things that people think, and also just the way that people use the internet has also changed. I think in 2011, for example, it was a little bit different than it currently is. So that's a really good point. And yeah, that's definitely something that we want to consider going forward. And to the second part of your question, you can find anything that is archived. It will still be available like on your account. It just isn't public. So if something was archived, it will still show up as like an archived post. If it was deleted, then it will not show up anymore. But if something was just archived, then it will. And I believe the comments on that post will also still be archived. So like you'll still be able to see that you posted the comment. It just won't be public anymore, and you won't be able to search for it. Like in the public search bar, but you can search for it on your own account, just to clarify that. Yeah. That's a really good point, though. Thanks for bringing that up, Nate.
Any more questions for Sarah? Anybody? Things you'd like to be able to find or post? Cool. I think you've either got every question answered or if you got a lot of shy people here, Sarah.
Now, hopefully, again, if you have questions, you can always reach out to me after today. You have the emails that I use. And again, I look forward to interacting with everyone and helping support you in the work that you're doing.
Cool. Sarah, thank you so very much for the work that you do. Related to the network, of course, but even just related to communicating to us and I'm sure to others, how to connect with the folks or the resources available on the network. There's just so much there. And like I say, it goes back 15 years. So there's a substantial collection of resources there. And just about any search you could think of is going to yield some helpful results. So thank you very much, Sarah. Appreciate you having you join us today. Thank you. All right. I am seeing Trudy on the line now. And Trudy, welcome. Good to see you. Trudy is going to walk us through another resource that I think would be super helpful for you who are church visitors and regional pastors, and that is our Regional Connectors Network. I'm going to let Trudy talk more about that, but maybe you could say a thing or two first of all about yourself, Trudy, and then walk us through the Regional Connectors Network.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for inviting me. My name is Trudy Ash. I live in Malacca, Minnesota, and I attend Pease Christian Reformed Church out here. Um, I am a regional connector myself for the U.S. Central region, but I also lead the team of connectors that we have around North America. Um, I've been doing this, well, I've been with the denomination for 8+ years, and it has always been in some shape or form with regional work here in my own region, building relationships and um, getting to know churches and church leaders, and it's been a great joy. So it's really fun for me to be here. I recognize some of your faces and a lot of your names, so this is kind of fun. I'm going to go through the who, what, where, and why of regional connectors. But I'm not going to start with the who. Actually, I'm going to start with the what and what we do. So the basic thing is in our title, we connect. Our job is to connect church leaders and pastors with resources, with each other, people that do the same thing so they can learn from each other and be encouraged in that way. We connect, like if we're out and about and we hear a question come up that, leads back to Thrive, then we are the ones we're constantly listening for that. And so that we can connect churches to whatever person in Thrive that might be able to help them, whether it's safe church or disability concerns or leadership development, dwell curriculum, or other kinds of curriculum resources like that. In the past year or two, we've really kind of been digging into helping churches that are vacant and helping search teams and just helping navigate that process. And that has been very well received and been a lot of fun for us actually to work with search teams and helping them figure out that process because it can be a lot for churches, and every church's how they do that is different, or in some way even should be different because every church is different. So that's been a real joy for us actually to connect with churches on that level. The who, I'm going to share my screen. Oh, no, I just lost the oh, there it is.
Trudy, I'm going to put in the chat a link to the Regional Connectors page just for everybody in case they want to check that out.
Perfect. All right. Can everybody see the Thrive page up?
Mhm.
Okay. So as you all know, there are regions, 5 regions. So we have what we call regional connectors and we have affinity connectors, but I'll start with the regional connectors. So Canada West, we have Liz Tolkamp. Canada East is Becky Jones. US East is Sandra Gonzalez. The Great Lakes is Idella Winfield. US Central Midwest is myself, and Elaine Lee is in the US West. And so you'll see on here that you can, for most of us, you can schedule a chat with us that connects to our calendar, and you can set up a Zoom meeting with us. And you'll also see a link to a playlist, and I'll explain what those are in a little bit. But then if you go further down, we have 4 what we call affinity connectors. These people connect with not a geographical region of churches, but more a group of churches that are connected in a different way. So we have a youth and young adult connector that works with youth champions, youth leaders, emerging adults, helping churches, work through youth ministry questions or issues or things that they're exploring, but also works closely with not just youth ministry, but also emerging adults. A lot of churches are talking about how to reach out to emerging adults. And then we have a Hispanic connector. Her name is Aura. She's quite something. She's amazing. But she works with a lot of Hispanic churches, just connecting with them over issues that are specific to Hispanic churches or leaders, but also to help them connect with the greater denomination. 'Cause a lot of times they aren't aware of the resources that we have. There's also translation that happens that Aura does for us too. And then we have Catherine and Chris, who are both connectors to our Korean communities of churches. Catherine is probably more on the side of communications, but also has been around long enough that a lot of Korean leaders know her and trust her, and she's been a great asset. And Chris actually just joined us from Resonate. And so he has a great knowledge of the Korean communities and has just been a great asset to our team as well. So that's the who. So if you're ever not sure of who your connector is, that's where you will find them, or you can always reach out to me too, and I can connect you because that's what I do. But the where, let's talk about the where. Like, where do we show up? Where you might see us? Classis meetings. We try to get to each of our classis meetings about once every year or 18 months, depending on the size of our regions. It can be difficult to hit all of the classis meetings, but we try to make an appearance at them. When we're at classis meetings, our sole objective is to just connect to, sometimes it's to be in the back and just talk with pastors that are coming and going or church leaders that are there. Sometimes we will get up and talk about what's happening with Thrive, and just so that people get to know who we are and can start building some relationships that way. And this is where playlists come into play. We put together a playlist of 4 or 5 resources that, as we've been about our region, we think are relevant to what's happening in each region. So the playlist might look different from region to region, and we'll highlight different resources. But I'm guessing you've seen them in either your classes agendas or even the minutes that come out later, or they've gotten passed out to you in hard copy form at a classes meeting. So that's one, that's one resource that we hand out just to kind of get information out about what's happening at Thrive. I just had a thought and now I just lost it about the playlist. Hopefully it'll come back to me. Where else you'll see us is emails, region-wide emails. Sometimes we'll send out if something happens between classes meetings that we want to get the information out about. We'll send out emails to, maybe it's a group email to pastors, or maybe it's a group email to church administrators. Sometimes when we have the information and a group email for youth leaders or for children's ministry leaders, will send group emails out in that regard to get information out. We also might show up at events that are in your region. A lot of our work is to connect, but it's also to listen to what's going on in the region. That's what I was going to say about classes meetings. The playlists come from us listening to what people are talking about when we're out meeting with church pastors or leaders. We're listening. What's happening? What are churches interested in? What could be helpful to churches in different areas of ministry? And so that information goes back to Thrive. And so that it's a lot of the resources that come out of Thrive are actually starting with what the connectors are hearing out in the regions. And that we have found that to be a great feedback loop for Thrive. Also, if we are in your area,
just one illustration of what you just said. The resource we just put together about employment, so employment essentials is what we call it. That is exactly the story behind that resource. We heard so many comments from churches through the regional connectors that we couldn't help but say, we've got to spend some time on this. Came up with the resource called the Employment Essentials. So to a large degree, you can thank the regional connectors for that resource.
Yeah, another example would be the elder and deacon essentials that are coming out, the training for councils that is a question that we get a lot. So that, yeah, it's been for us connectors, it's been a fun part of our job to be able to be a part of that feedback loop. One more place where we show up. I was going to say that like when we do come to classis meetings or when we come to events, we try to be really intentional about using our time wisely. And so like if I'm going to go to Pella in my area for a classis meeting or for an event, I'm also going to try and reach out to 3 or 4 churches and say, hey, I'm in the area. Can I have coffee with your pastor? Or what's your church admin up to? Can we go have coffee? Just to, again, to listen and to build relationships so that when questions arise, when people are sitting in a meeting at church and they are talking about some new idea, that they might remember us and say, I should reach out to Trudy. I wonder if she knows of another church that has tried something like this or something like that. And that's, yeah, those are my most favorite emails or phone calls to get, just to help churches out when they're thinking about something new. And lastly, the why. Why do we do this? You know what? I wrote down 3 things, and I've kind of touched on this already. One is really just we want to learn about your church and ministry because it is helpful to thrive, but it's also helpful to all the other churches in our denomination because of that whole feedback loop I just talked about. Secondly, Thrive's whole thing is to equip and encourage congregations, and that's exactly what, as connectors, we want to do. We want to equip you with what you need, and we want to encourage you in your ministry. And then thirdly, a big piece of this, it was just in a meeting this morning, and we were talking about this, about how we really do want to, we feel like, because we're also, in our own churches and in our ministries that we're involved in, but we're co-laboring together in our denomination to help all of our churches thrive, to help all of our churches find places of renewal or regeneration, all that kind of stuff. So it's, I can testify to every one of those connectors that I showed you. They're not just faces on our webpage. These are people that have deep connections to our denomination and to our congregations and to church leaders because of the relationships that they've built and the common desire to just see our churches be in the world doing what God wanted the church to be. So that's my whole presentation, and I know I went through that really quickly, but are there any questions about the regional connectors or our role?
I'm just curious, and this is for the group here. Go ahead into the chat and just type in your regional connector. Let's see how many folks are able to, like off the top of their head, know who the regional connector is. Let's just see how much familiarity there is out there. I see Trudy Ash with 2 exclamation points behind it.
I may have paid them earlier.
Terrific. There's some good awareness out there. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I will say this, speaking from experience, when you see us at classis meetings and we're standing in the back, please come and talk to us. It's like our favorite thing. And sometimes we are a little like we don't want to bother, right? And we don't want to be pushy, but we certainly do love to talk about your church and even just to get to know you personally. So just that would be my one request for all of my connectors on my team. Classis meetings can be a little daunting sometimes because there's a lot of business that happens. So.
Any questions for Trudy on the regional connectors? Another resource for all of you as you do your good work.
Oh, that's great. I must have done a really great job. That's what I'm going to leave with anyways. One last request too is the whole vacant church thing. If you are working with vacant churches, I've got a great checklist that I have put together because I just finished on chairing the search team for my own church. And so I would love to share it with people and see how it works for other churches. So reach out to me if you have churches that are either just starting that process or even in the middle of it. As connectors, we'd love to connect with them. Somebody should have counted how many times I said the word connect. I think it was a lot.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you for giving me some time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Trudy, I'll just add to your last note about pastor search that one of the resources Thrive is working on currently, and again, this is because we've heard from the churches out there, is a video training, very brief video training for search committees. And that video is going to be available to councils, of course, as well, because both of those teams will want to work closely together in the course of a search process. Associated with that is a training for classis counselors. This is a classis functionary position that we don't spend a lot of time on supporting, and we want to reverse that. So, alongside of the pastor search and all the other resources that Trudy is talking about that are on her playlist, we're going to be adding a couple of videos in the coming months.
Yeah. John, do you have a question?
Just about search teams, I'm noticing here as a church counselor, a number of churches I'm working with are using headhunting firms. And they're very good at bringing bodies, often outside the CRC.
Yep.
So I've been dealing with that a bunch recently, and there's a long articulate process, which Jill Vanderwerken could walk us all through always. But it's an extensive process, and there's often not a lot of information for the council or the candidate on the front end that there is a long process. I'm just curious. Yeah, I'd love to have you guys engaged since a lot of churches are turning to those things because of the sludge in the system. Maybe best practices for finding headhunters, and even some of those are well known, like Sam Hamstra. I think it'd be helpful maybe for Thrive even to have some conversations with him, so that there's again, that's part of the system that's the CRC is inhabiting. So just want to observe that from our side of the ministry.
Thanks, John. Yeah, that's a helpful comment. Yeah, we're acquainted with Sam's work, of course, with the Rooks Group, and there's Boomerang, there's Vanderbloemen, there's a bunch of them out there, and they promised to churches the gift of efficiency. The challenge is that sometimes, maybe very often, maybe with the exception of Sam Hamstra, there's less familiarity with some of the distinctives that we want to hold dear. Our educational requirements, for example, polity stuff. Oh my word, a lot of churches out there are gaining pastors out of a Baptist tradition, and then going through the hoops, and then a year or two later realizing that this pastor assumes that he or she kind of calls the shots on everything because that's what they grew up with. And they're running into councils that are saying, wait a minute, that's not how it goes around here. And then fireworks, happen. So there's just some stuff to be aware of as you're engaging a headhunting agency to do your work for you. There are just some risks to be aware of for sure.
Yeah, I would just add to that there have definitely been some success stories, like Dave said, but there's also been some challenges too. And in my experience, the challenge comes that just basically that nobody knows your church like you do. And so the fit piece can be like that's a big challenge, and which is kind of what Dave just said too. But my church chose to not go the headhunter route and to go the more traditional route, but we tried to think outside the box a little bit as to what the traditional route means or looks like. And yeah. So I would love to talk with churches before they I would love to talk with a vacant church as they were thinking through the process of should we go headhunter or should we, go the more traditional route of the search team. I think there's good points of conversation to have at that moment rather than to wish they would have had it later. So,
cool.
yeah.
Trudy, thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for leading us through some discovery about the regional connectors.
Yeah. As always, reach out whenever. It's good to be with you all. Thank you.
See you, Trudy. Well, everybody, let's take a break. And before you go, don't close out this Zoom meeting. We want to have you return to this meeting, and from here we'll send you off into the breakout groups for church visitors and regional pastors. But let's be back here, excuse me, and here's a granular number for you, okay, for everybody, 3:59. Let's do that. Back at 3:59. See you in a little bit. George, I saw your note in the chat on amen on your warning note, and I misread that initially. I misread it to say amen on your heartwarming note. And I thought, huh, I don't know if I've offered a heartwarming note yet. And then I read it again. It's the warning note, the one about headhunting agencies. So I'm glad I read that twice. We'll 3:59, so we'll get underway here pretty soon. Waiting for everybody else to make sure we're on, up and running. Kim, I'll look to you in just a minute here for some instructions on the breakout rooms and how to get there. But we'll give folks another little bit here to make sure that they're up and running with us. Glad to see folks coming back. Art with his cup of coffee. Well done. Let's see, there are some folks
Smell
here.
it, Dave?
What's that, Art?
You can smell the coffee?
Oh, no, I can't smell it. Sorry. That'd be nice. I have a 1 cup of coffee per day kind of rule. It's my 10 o'clock treat. And I don't know about you, but I'm a fan of Shul coffee, which is made here in well, not made. It's packaged and, ground and prepared here in Grand Rapids. And they have a variety called Fog Chaser that is spectacular. All right, let's get underway here, Kim. Again, I'm going to turn to you to help us with the breakout groups, instructions on where to go and how to get there.
Well, it should be easy. You should be able to just sit still. I pre-assigned the breakout groups one for regional pastors and one for the church visitors. If you happen to get in the wrong one, just exit and I will put you in the other one. Or if for some reason you drop out of one of the groups, just join the meeting again and I'll put you in the proper place.
Thank you, Kim.
I think it should be good to go. Open all rooms.
This meeting is being recorded.
Right. Hello, regional pastors. I just see in my, I've got access to who's in the breakout or who's in the main room yet. Get assigned. There's a couple of people there, so I'm just going to give us a little bit of time to see if they get assigned, if they make their way into the right room. 2 now is 1, so we're making progress. And again, we're going to be using the participant guide that you clicked onto earlier in our time together today, the one for regional pastors. There was another one for church visitors, and Joel and the church visitors are going to look at that one. I mean, you're welcome to look at that one too, but we're not going to go there together today. All right. Tell you what, while we're just going to give a little pause before we launch, I would just love to have folks tell us where you're at work. And I'm just going to go according to the folks that are on my screen here. Have you introduce yourselves, your name, where you serve in ministry, what classes you represent. That would be great. We'll start with Andrew, go to Wendell, and then Willem Delleman over in BC there. So Andrew, who are you?
All right, Andrew DeGelder. I'm here at Aylmer Christian Reformed Church, which is part of Classis Ontario Southwest.
Awesome.
Which is in Canada, Ontario.
Yeah, happy belated Thanksgiving.
Yeah, thank you.
There we go, Wendell, and then Willem.
Wendell Davalar. I'm from Hollandale, Minnesota, the token Minnesota church in Classis, North Central Iowa.
Nice.
No one's ever a token.
Right on.
Willem Delleman. I'm in Victoria, British Columbia, also Canada, and broke tradition yesterday. I had nachos for dinner, not turkey. Classis BC, so Northwest.
Awesome. Hope you enjoyed dinner, Willem.
Oh, we did.
All right, then Simon and Ken Kraus, Tim Koyman, and then Sean Briggs.
Yeah, hi. Simon Tuen, serve at Heritage Christian Reformed Church in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and serving in Classis Kalamazoo.
Well, thanks, Simon. Ken?
Hi, Ken Kraus. I serve at Fellowship Christian Reformed Church in Big Rapids, Michigan, about an hour north of Grand Rapids. And we're part of Classis Muskegon, the far north of Classis Muskegon.
I got to hang out with you folks a few months ago. That was terrific. Good to see you.
Yeah, it was a great training session.
Yeah, we had a good time. All right, Tim, and then Sean.
All right, Tim Koyman. I'm pastoring at Delavan Christian Reformed Church in Delavan, Wisconsin, and part of Classis, Wisconsin.
Thanks, Tim.
John Bricks. I work at Calvin Seminary, but I live in Ontario. I'm in Classis Quinte, which is just east of Toronto. I serve as a pastor ambassador for the seminary in Canada.
Cool. Yeah, Sean, you and I get to hang out together a bunch of times along the way. It's pretty great. All right, Derek, and then George and Nick.
Yeah, Derek Bauma. I'm serving as a specialized transitional minister in Emmanuel CRC in Simcoe, which is in Classis Hamilton. But I live in Classis, Ontario Southwest, and so I'm a regional pastor on the west side of that Classis.
Thanks, Derek. George, you're up. You're on mute too yet. Oh, you're on mute yet, George.
Oh,
there you
I thought
go.
you were taking care of all the buttons there. I'm sorry about that. George name, Grand Rapids South.
Yeah, thanks, George. So Nick, and then Al, and then Wendell.
All right, I get to follow George. Nick Blystra. I'm pastor of the Fairfield Christian Reformed Church in Fairfield, California, part of Classis Central California.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah. Al Scapp, I'm also in California, Classis Central California, and I have the South Valley part of the region for pastoring.
Well, thanks, Al. Wendell.
I'm just moving around the list. You've had me before.
Oh, that's right. Thanks, Wendell. Yeah, you were up on my first row, and now you're, for whatever reason, you've shifted on my screen. All right, everybody, let's go to the participants guide. And what I want to do for our last few minutes together here today is just walk you through some resources that I think are going to be helpful to you, and then look together at a set of questions that you might ask pastors. And I just want to hear you out on what you think might be a helpful question, what's not such a helpful question. I just would love to have your wisdom on that. So let me first go through some resources. Number one, up the top there, the annual pastoral well-being check-in. This resource and the next resource are brand new. And they come as a request of Synod. Synod asked us to do some work around bivocational pastors, especially around their health recognizing that if you're in two lines of work, the possibility of burnout is pretty high. So if you're in ministry and you're doing something else, you're bivocational, there's just a lot of risk for burnout. So we've developed an annual pastoral well-being that is administered by the council. Council will set up a meeting with the pastor, typically, our hope at least, and walk through the questions that are on this this checklist. And this checklist is based on work that Chris Adams and a few others have done in terms of flourishing in ministry. There's some good work that's been done for the last, I'm going to say 10 or 15 years by the folks initially out of Notre Dame, now out of Biola University in California. And it's called Flourishing in Ministry. This is to a large degree based on their work, but it's tailored for councils to care for their pastors. Just want you to be aware of that one. The next item on the list is one that you're going to be more, probably more attentive to because it's something that we're hoping you will administer. This is a pastoral transition interview. And let's just follow the link there for a second, everybody. Let's see if we can head out there together for a minute. I've got another screen here, so it's easy, for me. But you'll see there, I see a bunch of you coming on board. Let me make sure that I've shared it with everybody. Yeah, you've got general access, so you should be able to get there. So this is a toolkit for whenever a pastor comes to the close of a particular ministry setting. So they take a call to another church and leave their current congregation, or they retire out of their current church, and it's time just to do a little bit of a debrief. And we would rather have somebody from outside the congregational system do this interview because you don't have anything at stake other than the pastor's health. So you get to lead this pastor, let's say she's retired or he's taken a call or whatever, through these questions. And then ideally, you'll have sent these questions ahead of time, have them go through the questions, and then your meeting is to kind of take a look at their answers together and to debrief their time at this particular congregation or ministry. Our observation is that what they say in response to the questions has some importance. What is more important is to have somebody alongside of them as they are debriefing those answers, as they're kind of walking through, again, what they've said and why they've said it. So the instrument, I guess you could think of it this way, the instrument is a platform for conversation. Conversation about their former ministry, platform for conversation about their personal well-being and health, platform for you then to make observations about their well-being, about their health, about things that they ought to be attentive to. We think it could be really effective in that respect. So that you're looking at concepts like vocation, a singularly important concept for pastors. Challenge, what challenges have they encountered over their time in their ministry? Success, what does that look like? How do you measure success? Community, and then finally future. And you'll see some objective work. So name 3 words that ... And then you'll see some subjective work. So conversation prompting questions. It's a standard feature of all 5 of those sections. And we would like to have you set up that time with the pastor that you know is leaving for another ministry setting and say, hey, I just want to have some coffee with you. Could you fill out this inventory, this brief survey? And let's just talk about, how you've reflected on your time with this church. What are you curious about? What are you learning? What do you need to learn? What do we need to have you grow in so that you are primed and ready if you're taking another call for that next season of ministry? So we, again, are hoping that you'll take care of this with these pastors. And ahead of time, we'll say thank you for doing that. Let's keep on going for a second down the list here. You've got the Spiritual Vitality Toolkit. That has been around for a while, but we still find it to be incredibly useful for pastors to do, what's her name again? The author I'm thinking about this, Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership. She wrote that book. boy, help me out here, guys.
Ruth Haley Barton.
Ruth Haley Barton. Thank you, Sean. This is her primary concern, is that you are administering out of the wellness of your soul rather than out of a to-do list or out of an expected persona that you think you ought to live. How well is your soul? This is a toolkit for pastors to kind of think that through, and something for you to offer to pastors as you're concerned again about their well-being. The next item on the list, pastors in transition. So this is simply a resource for pastors who are making those moves that we talked about earlier. And this is a corollary resource, you could say. It just offers them some guidance about what transition should look like and that sort of thing. The next one on the list is probably about 3 or 4 years old. And oh, Willem, let me get you the link here. Where's my chat? There it is. So I'm going to put it in the chat. This is just the participant's guide, Willem, for our session. So let me know. Give me a thumbs up if you're getting it. Should be awesome. Awesome. Okay, so we are, let's see, we're on page 2 by now, and we're looking at number 5 on the list there of resources, pastors experiencing traumatic loss. I'm thinking about pastors who've lost their spouse, lost a child, or been through something similarly traumatic. And there's guidance there for the pastor, for the council, for the regional pastor, for the classis. This came out of a conversation with Henry Steenbergen, who was in Ontario, now is in Alberta in retirement. And he reflected with me at one time about the death of his wife and how he wished that somebody were there to say to his council, this is how you can minister to your pastor in the event of this loss. Here are things to say. Here are things not to say. So pretty helpful, I think. Vocational ministry assessments, things like the Berkman assessment and other instruments that help pastors to be more, and here's the key, self-aware. So that pastors can know themselves better, can know how they enter a room and what impact they have on the room, and can know what the trigger points are when they're getting stressed out and starting to act in dysfunctional ways. Self-awareness is so important for people in ministry positions so that they function in a healthy way out of awareness of who they are. And then finally, and we talked about this with Sarah a little bit earlier in our time together today, the pastor's retirement roadmap. This is something that we developed and published about 2 years ago. And everything from how do you think about yourself as you're approaching retirement? What are the pitfalls that might happen when your role evaporates? Will you evaporate with it? Conversations like, what's a timeline for moving my way towards retirement? From 5 years out to 3 years out to 1 year out, 6 months out, and so on. Lots of conceptual advice, lots of practical advice for those who are heading into retirement, and something for you to have in hand as you're looking out at your class as pastors and realizing that there are some folks who are kind of in that age category or who you know are thinking about retirement. Make sure they're aware of this resource. Let me stop there. That was a quick journey through a lot of what I think is really helpful stuff. Any questions or even comments, things that you've engaged that you found to be helpful, or things that you've engaged that you wish were more helpful? Let me hear from a couple of people.
I can go. One of the very first things that you mentioned that the council is supposed to administer, I just fill it out on my own and give it to them. I do it every year. It's a great church, truly. They treat me really good, but and they're concerned about my health and everything else, but they are not great at doing evaluation. So
Right.
I always put a quirky answer in there to see if anybody actually read it, and they do. So I do my own evaluation, and then I find that it provides what I need, and it works in my setting.
Nice. Thanks, Willem. Yeah, I remember putting into my pastor's report to my council some years ago that I'd killed my grandmother just to see if anybody was listening. And it turns out some were not. And your comment gives me the opportunity just to distinguish between a couple of things. So this well-being assessment is not a performance evaluation tool. The two serve different purposes. They're both very important, but they're complementary. One is about wellness, the other is about how you are doing the do, right? The to-do list that the church has for you and what you might need to do that work well. So there's some overlap, but they are different tools. But I'm glad, Willem, that your church is caring for you. And I sympathize with you in the sense that the church doesn't do performance evaluations well. Turns out that that's a rare skill among churches. Let's have one more thought, one more comment, then we'll go on. What have you encountered on the list here? What's been helpful? What do you wish were more helpful? Or is there a resource you wish were there that we haven't yet thought of?
This is Al Scott. I just say that whole transition of retirement. I was with you, Dave, and a number of others a couple years ago. That's really helpful. We were well into the process already, but to have a time to reflect, and I found that doing it with a number of others who are either going into their last pastorate assignment or heading toward retirement was really quite helpful, just to think out loud, reflect out loud, have a little bit more objectivity, because you have a hard time seeing your own stuff as clearly as you need to sometimes, and both the affirmations and encouragement to say, hey, yeah, but what about this? And that was a very helpful, and I think this whole retirement business is well, George could tell you, and a few others probably could, but a little bit more to it than I had expected.
Yeah, thanks, Al. That's a good word. Retirement is more than just laying down the work. There's more stuff going on, that's for sure.
Well, especially if you feel like God still can use you in different aspects, like regional pastoring, for example, even though you don't have the burdens of the particular local church.
Yeah, that's right. And thanks for your work as a regional pastor out there in Central California. Much appreciated. Okay, let's think together about item B on the list. It's really the last thing for us to think about, and that is the questions that you might ask pastors. And they're oriented around this assumption that it is really, really hard to be a pastor who is faithful to who God made that pastor to be. That is really hard in a context where everybody has all kinds of things that they want you to be as a pastor. And you're torn in all kinds of different directions. And if you're a people pleaser, particularly, you are prone to follow other people's perceptions of who you should be rather than being faithful to who God has made you to be and who he wants you to become. So these are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about as I connect with pastors. How well do you know yourself? How well are you able to stand up for who you are in the context of people who have all kinds of thoughts about who they want you to become? So these questions kind of pop in my mind. Everybody knows who they would like you, the pastor, to be. Do you know who you actually are? I think that's one of the questions you might think about. You might want to be the answer person as the pastor of this church. You might want to be the star preacher. You might want to be the one people ask for when they're in the hospital. You might want to be the administrator with a deep bag of ministry tricks. But is that who God made you to be? Do you know who you are? Do you know who God made you to be? We're talking vocational kind of things here. Do you know your vocation? Do you know how to process both criticism and admiration? There's a book out there called This Wondrous Calling, and it talks about the two devils of criticism and admiration or praise. And they are dangerous, both of them, because they try to entice you away from who you are designed to be. And the trick is to try to learn how to kind of receive these things and be connected with people while being differentiated from their emotionality and from their agendas. And then number 5 there, who will you be after retirement? That's kind of a bracing question for all those who are anticipating retirement, but it's a good question for those who are not yet anticipating retirement. When this role goes away, this role that I have invested so much into, this role that I may love so deeply, or maybe dislike so intensely in this season of my ministry, when this role goes away, do I know who I will be? And I think that's a conversation that you have to have settled before you can anticipate retirement in a healthy way. So anyway, let me just kind of put those on the table for you for a minute. And we've just got a couple of minutes, but I'd love to hear a couple of thoughts on how you look at these questions, or maybe if you have other questions that you thought of to help pastors begin to connect again to who they really are rather than who everybody else thinks they should be. What do you think?
Dave, I'm going to jump in.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think these are really good questions. And there's a word that does not appear in here but what you said, and that is differentiation. And yeah, I think that is always an ongoing issue for pastors of every age. There is that, as you say, that enticing thing to, to give into criticism or admiration, but just what I see in a lot of these questions is basically, who are you compared to who people want you to be? And, I don't know that I would say these questions verbatim, but I think you're getting at something really important. And that is, as pastors, we have all these things projected onto us, but who is God calling us to be? Who were we created to be? Those are really good conversation things.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I think the identity question is just so key. And hopefully you've kind of resolved that a little bit as you've felt the call to ministry, way back when that was, and you've been able to get a sense that you and the call are not identical. That's just a really kind of important realization early on in ministry.
Dave, I agree. These are really good questions. I think it's one of the things I've tried to do is encourage pastors within our classes to engage with a spiritual director. I can come and ask these questions or similar types of questions once a year, or once every 6 months or whatever. But to be in an ongoing relationship with a spiritual director where these kinds of questions are the focus, I think is really, really healthy. At least it has been for me. And so, yeah, just that's another helpful resource that we as regional pastors should be aware of and be encouraging people to consider as well when it comes to questions like these.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, spiritual directors, this is their stock and trade. This is the stuff that they work through with people. Yeah, I think about other resource people like therapists, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, coaches, mentors, and so on. One of the things that we look for when we sense a pastor needs to kind of think about some things is, who's your support community? Do you have connection to your regional pastor? Do you have a connection to somebody else in a support role, whether that's a therapist or spiritual director, like you talk about, Sean, or a counselor or mentor of some kind? And it's always good to be curious with that, or about that, with a pastor. Who are your people? Who's your first call or your second call? And if they are able to provide a pretty quick answer, they're in good shape. Hey, any final thoughts, everybody, before I wrap us up in a time of prayer here?
I just have a quick one.
Yeah, Ken.
It kind of goes back to the last questions, maybe, that we were talking about the different assessments. The denomination seems to use the Berkman quite a bit. And I've been through it and had it interpreted, but I felt there was good listening for that. But I didn't see how my personality, it wasn't really explained very well how my personality fits with ministry. The different aspects of the personality through that assessment. I would have liked to have seen, well, this is what makes you gifted in these areas in ministry, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, that's just my thoughts on the Berkman.
Well, you weren't supposed to say that, Ken.
Okay.
No, thanks for offering that. You're not the first person to say that. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. We've had other people talk about that from time to time as well. The Berkman provided a good platform for conversation, didn't necessarily nail, who I am and how I function in ministry. And I think that's actually to be expected. A tool is a tool is a tool, and some are more effective than others. We're also working with Working Genius. Patrick Lencioni has published that. We're finding that to be pretty helpful. We're doing track assessments. This is the work of, oh boy, what's his name now? Why can I not come up with it? I just got a training in this like 2 weeks ago. Anyway, yeah. So like you say, Ken, some instruments are helpful, some are not so much. By the way, if you are interested in a debrief, in addition to what you've encountered, let me know. I can put you in touch with Ben Veneragon, who does a lot of this work. I'm trained in the Berkman. We can talk together as well if you find that would be helpful. Just let me know. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Let me take us. Oh yeah, good question, Al. Who's going to Niagara Falls for the pastors conference and the regional pastors conference? I'm going to be there.
I'll be deer hunting.
You'll be deer. All right. Hope you bag something great, Wendell. Let's go to God, everybody. Father, we are blessed to be called into your family, and we are blessed to be called into support roles in your family. And we're blessed to be called to support the supporters in your family. As we conduct that work in the role of regional pastor, would you hold us and nourish us and nurture us and send us? Give us attentive eyes and ears. Give us words to speak when that is helpful. And give us the capacity to hold silence when that is better. Make us instruments of your peace, Father God, Lord Jesus, Holy Spirit. And we pray that you would bless all those around this table in the rest of this day. Help us to sense your presence, to be made confident, bold, courageous, humble, strong, and gracious, as you, Lord Jesus, live within us. We pray in your beautiful name. Amen. All right, gang, you have blessed me with your conversation and presence, and I've been delighted to be with you again today. Thanks for coming, and thanks for your work. We are so glad to have you there with pastors providing support. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye, everybody.